This film is about the experiences of an evacuee during World War II. Doreen Westlake, née Rawlings, lived with her parents in New Addington, near Croydon, until September 1939, when she was 4 years old. In September 1939, Britain declared war on Germany and thus entered into the Second World War. I'd just like to give a bit of background information about evacuees during World War II. The British government had begun planning Operation Pied Piper in July of 1939. As a result of their forward planning, during the first 3 days of the war, 1.5 million people, that's a lot of people, were evacuated. They were mostly children, but there were also mothers, pregnant women and disabled people. The evacuees were sent to live with families in the countryside. People who lived in the countryside were obliged to host an evacuee or evacuees if they had a spare room and if they were instructed to do so by the government. They were paid 10 shillings a week, which is probably about £26 in today's money, for the first child, unaccompanied child, and for the second unaccompanied child they received 8 shillings. The government's reasons for the evacuation were twofold. Firstly, it was considered that the children would be safer from German bombs if they were away from the major cities. And the second reason was that the British Army wanted the roads clear in the event that the Germans actually managed to land in Britain. They wanted the roads clear for a counter-attack against the Germans, and they didn't want the roads blocked by refugees who were trying to escape from the Germans. Until Doreen was 4 years old, she lived with her parents in New Addington, near Croydon. I asked Doreen to tell me some of her early memories of living in New Addington.
There's quite a few things come to my mind now when I was younger. I'm really only 3 to 4 year old, which just have flashes of memory that were good, some were bad. But I remember at the time there was a lot of banging, bombing going on. I didn't know. I thought perhaps it was fireworks or something going on, but you didn't take it all in then actually. But my granddad, who we were living with, my grandma, was a night watchman. So he had to go round and tap on people's windows and doors to put the blackouts up. He only had one leg because he was in the First World War. And my grandma and me used to walk down and take down a cocoa or whatever and sandwiches for him, but everything was so dark. That's why even today I don't like the dark. I don't like being hemmed in or anything. And then next minute there's a lot of digging going on in the back garden, and we thought it was quite fun really. Some of the children in the estate were looking, and one had to build their own air shelter if they had the room. So on the floor it was quite fun really, putting coconut matting on the floor, tins of food, little chairs and stools and blankets. It was quite fun really. But not fun when I did hear the fire siren go off and everybody had to run and jump and put. What I didn't like was when one had to put the lid, the cover on the top of the little tent. You know, there was a lid like artificial put on top, but it was gently lifted down when you got inside. So I didn't like that. So I suppose as a child you let it run over your head a bit, but it did leave a mark, and I don't like the dark and I don't like going in lifts. Yeah, I do go in lifts, but I don't like them. So, and then we come out, you'd hear the siren again, and then it'd be fine. but there was a lot of damage, a lot of commotion going on, and I know it cleared up for a while, and the ground, when it was fine, we went into London, to the Alexandra Hall, no, Albert Hall, the Albert Hall, a wonderful place. And I remember going there with my grandma and watching some sort of concert, musical thing. And when we came out, it was a bus trip. It's only 8 miles away, so it wasn't very far. But so foggy, it was terrible. The bus was hardly moving, rather frightening as well. So it was not very nice, so we didn't go again for quite a long while. I had to help my grandma and granddad and mum and dad. They all lived at 62 Wentworth Road, Croydon. We had some kittens, beautiful little kittens in our kitchen. They were born in the boiler, a copper boiler, which they had those days in the kitchen. But I come down one morning and they were gone. So I did cry, because I did like those little cats. I had a sister, Margaret, and a little baby called Hazel. But Hazel was quite poorly, I think, as a child, because I remember a lot of conupance going on, with the doctor coming in, and Hazel was laying on the table, crying quite loud, and I think she went to hospital for a while. And then she came back again, so everything was fine and happy. Then all of a sudden, things started to happen. Blinds were put up in the houses, black blinds, but I got very frightened. I know I did. I think this is when all the evacuation must have started, and my mother was preparing things for me to go away with, like socks and jumpers and clothes and things like that. Not a lot though. It was quite a walk, not to the railway station. It was a lovely day, lots of people. I wasn't the only one. It was quite exciting, really. Whatever's going on. Then Miss Kay, one of the teachers that used to look after me at the play school, Miss Kay, she came along as well, which I was happy about. So she could hold my hand and left my mum.
According to the government regulations, the minimum age for an evacuee was 5 years. This meant that Doreen didn't qualify because she was only 4 years old. Doreen's mother, however, filled out a form saying that she was actually 5 years old, and so Doreen was able to set off on her journey to North Devon on the train. She was accompanied by one of the teachers from school.
Mum was crying and I wondered why. But she did have a pretty dress on, that's what I kept thinking. It was red and orange, very pretty colour. And she had dark hair, I remember. That's the last time I saw my mother, until she was about 80 years old, when we went on Cilla Black show to find her. So that's another story, really. So anyway, it was on the train, and it was from Croydon to Ilfracombe. So you can imagine those days how long the train took. We did stop along the way, and we had ice creams given to us, which was lovely, and that was nice. And then we got to Ilfracombe. We always got right dark then, it was getting dark. We went to Alexandra Hall at Ilfracombe, and there we had tea and all looked after and spoilt a bit, really. And then they took us in our different directions where we were going. So then we had another trip down to Lee Bay, which was 1.5 miles away from Ilfracombe, and took to the village hall. And there was another little girl called Barbara. She was standing next to me, and she was crying, because Barbara did miss her mum, because her mum was very good to her, and she did come and help look after Barbara for a few weeks. So this lady come towards us, and that was Mrs. Giddy, and just took hold of my hand, took hold of Barbara's, said, "Come along, I'm taking you home." So off we went, and it was very, very dark by then, and quite hilly, because Mrs. Giddy's house was on a hill, quite steep, no lights. So I think I was grizzling all the time. Must have been grizzling all the time. And I'm afraid I had had a few accidents. But we got into Mrs. Giddy's house, very big house, but it was parted into two. Mr. Giddy had a sister, Auntie Frances, and his mum was still living. They lived in one part of the house, and Auntie and Uncle lived in the other, and Mary. They had a daughter called Mary. And she looked, as Mary was the oldest, Barbara, then me. But we must have frightened Mary, because we must have looked a terrible state. And Mr. Giddy's mum wanted to see us. So she came up the steps into the kitchen, and we stood up against the wall, Barbara and me. And I remember saying that she frightened me, because she looked like Queen Victoria, honestly. She had a black dress on with a choke around her neck and hair back in a bun. And she just looked us up and down and said, "Dorothy, give them a wash." It was funny when I look back on it, but that's from there on. And it was a very, very happy time. It was a lovely country, so you could go out. We was allowed to go picnicking, picking flowers, and a very free life.
The little girls who lived at Sunnyside. On the right, wearing a beret, is Barbara, who travelled from Croydon on the same train as Doreen. In the middle is Doreen. On the left is Mary, the daughter of the house. Mary is the oldest, Barbara is 2 years younger, Doreen is 2 years younger still. Quite an age difference for children of that age, but they were good friends. Doreen, aged about 5. She is very nicely dressed in clothes made by Mrs. Giddy. The chair was probably made by Mr. Giddy. Doreen and Petra. Barbara at Sunnyside, photographed around the same time.
Barbara stayed there as well, but then her mother came, and she actually knew my mother, funny enough. Not a lot, but she did know her by passing. But she came, and she took Barbara back after a while when the war. Mrs. Giddy, Barbara's mum went to stay with Mrs. Giddy's sister, Mrs. Kingdom, at the other side of the village, to be with her daughter.
The girls with Mrs. Giddy. Doreen and Barbara called her Auntie, in keeping with the custom of evacuees calling their foster parents Auntie and Uncle. The boys are the Edwards boys, sons of the headmaster of Copthorne Preparatory School, which was evacuated to Lee Bay Hotel, just down the road from Sunnyside, during the war.
So, and finally I went back again to Lee Bay and stayed there for a long time. It was very, very happy days. I think I was a bit spoilt in one way. Mrs. Giddy had a sister called Winnie. She had 2 daughters, Elaine and Barbara. I think Barbara, the oldest one, used to spoil me a bit, felt sorry, I think. We used to go and play games in their house, hunt the thimble, and that she used to make sure that I won. I don't think the others were very pleased about that, but she did. And Mary used to play the piano, and I used to sneak in as far as I could. And when she wasn't there, I'd go and play a few notes. I did get into trouble for that. And then Mary used to go dancing lessons, tap dancing, So when she come home, she'd make me and Barbara practice with her tap dancing. It's so funny, really. But we were allowed to go in the fields, pick primroses, the moss, and Mrs. Giddy used to send them in shoe boxes on the train to London. It was very happy days. And my dad then used to send his sweet rations. So that was nice. And then sometimes he used to travel down to Ilfracombe from Croydon to see me. And you couldn't come all to Lee Bay because it was too far, because going back on the train again, because he only came down for the day. So we used to go into Ilfracombe's Mrs. Giddy's sister, Auntie Nell. She was a lovely lady, friendly. She had lots of evacuees, I think, as well, because our house always was full of children. So we used to stay there for dinner, Mrs. Giddy, my dad and me, and then go for walks. Then he'd have to go home. Then I did go back for a while. He took me back to my grand's and that, but I could not stand it. I didn't like the bombing was getting worse, and I really didn't take to it at all. I just wanted to get back to the quiet with Auntie and Uncle. So I came back, but when we went before, this was so funny really when you think about it, how honest people were those days. I was put on a train for my dad to meet me the other end. Now, that would never have happened today. I was put in the postgrad station where they put the letters and parcels at the back of the train and then sat on this couple of little seats into the coach. So I was sat there, and the man that looked after me. And there was always remember it, there was a gentleman sat opposite me, and I was fascinated by him because he had a case in front of him, and he kept opening this case and taking out things. And when I actually nosy, it was sandwiches. And so he looked at me, because I must have been looking to see, and he offered me a cucumber sandwich. I always remember cucumber sandwich. But yeah, when you think of it, I travelled all that way, and my dad met me at Croydon. It's a long time for to be on my own, to be honest. But that was fine. But then I came back again, and my dad brought me back. And that was the last time. Oh, then my dad and grandma, they sent me a parcel, and I was so excited. It was a pale blue dress with a little bolero, with a little button at the front that you could do up. Well, I think I got into a bit of a tantrum because I wanted to put it on. But it was miles too big for me, but I still put it on, and I wouldn't take it off. I've been told these stories. I wouldn't take it off, but I always remember that little dress, a pale blue dress. But it was lovely Christmas times and things there, because you see how small I was. I still slept in a cot. And Mr. and Mrs. Giddy gave me a lovely doll's cradle and a doll, which I loved. And there was a nun used to go there visit the relations called Uncle Charlie, and he gave me a book, Enid Blyton, a storybook. And I used to have a little present from Mrs. Kingdom's auntie's sister, Mrs. Kingdom. So I did a lot, but those days you didn't ask for much. You didn't really bother, as long as you had something.
Doreen was missing her sisters, but nobody knew anything about them.
I kept on. I did have sisters. I know I've got sisters. I used to cry a lot and have nightmares because I wanted to see Hazel, my sister, and I wanted to see Margaret. But Mr. Giddy kindly, because they did ask Miss Bates, that was the social worker, Miss Bates, and she said, oh no, we've no knowledge of anything like that. And so you know, it's a wonder I wasn't in a madhouse, really, because I did know I did. And so Mr. Giddy said, well, it didn't mean it, I don't think. But he said, I expect they're made into sausage meat by now. Well, that made me worse. I cried and I wouldn't eat sausages. There's no way would I eat a sausage. That's one of the funny sides about it when I think about it, but it wasn't really at the time. I was at school one day at the Ilfracombe Junior School, and I was called out into the hall, and these three people, they looked very big to me, looking down on me, saying, Doreen, you have got two sisters, you have. So from then on I knew I did have sisters.
Social services had begun to make an effort to find siblings who, as evacuees, had been separated and to bring them back together again. They managed to find Doreen's little sister, Hazel.
Getting families together, that's what they wanted to do, bring that they got lost or something together again, which they did find out that Margaret was adopted and she was in Australia. They couldn't find my mother anywhere. My dad, unfortunately, had died, but no one told Mrs. Giddy, no one told us, and we wondered why the sweet rations had stopped and he didn't come down to see me anymore. But Mrs. Giddy used to ask questions, but never sort of got any proper answers at all.
Mrs. Giddy was unfortunately ill at this time and couldn't take in another evacuee. So social services found a place in Appledore where the sisters could be together.
Mrs. Giddy was poorly, and well, naturally, I don't think she could have took on two children as well. Anyway, it parted all very nice. I travelled to Appledore on the bus with Miss Bates. I went to 119 Ursher Street, Appledore. So different. It was all ships and boats and streets and not much countryside. Not I'd been used to. It's quite, you know, it upset me really. I was upset about that. But as soon as I got there, there was a Navy officer lodging there. He was going home soon, off on leave, not coming back because it was the end of the war. And he must have told his mum about me. So when he came back, he brought a gold bangle and a lovely box, like a musical box. But I saw it for a day or two, and then I never saw it again. That's what Auntie did. If I had anything given to me, she used to take it away again. Probably give it back to me again on a birthday or Christmas. It was quite hard work there because I had to be up very early in the morning and used to scrub the front step, clean the brass, sweep the road outside before I went to school. And as a few of the children I was in my class, called Tommy and Florence, a few of them, that used to run past and say, come on, you'll be late. So anyway, I was late, but no one said a word. Nothing was said.
So Doreen was always late for school and nobody ever told her off. She was late because she was doing jobs for Auntie. Now you would think that if you were always late for school, the teacher would at least ask you why you were always late and try and encourage you to be on time. In this instance, nobody ever said anything to Doreen, which suggests that they might have known what was going on and didn't want to say anything.
I used to run and hang my coat up, run in the classroom and sit down, and nothing was said. So that's how it went on for a long time. They knew that what happened. I remember Miss Parsons, lovely teacher, and when it was my birthday, she used to say, will I stay behind and she'd give me a little box, and I'd probably have a little brooch in it or something like that. But if I took it home to Auntie, at the end I never saw it again. But then I had a surprise, because my sister came to live. I asked Auntie if she'd have her. And she was so small, she was 6-year-old. I remember her coming in a little bonnet, because I used to get earache a bit. And I had to go to bed with her every night, because she was a bit frightened. So that was my job, to go to bed with her. But unfortunately, she used to wet the bed a bit, because she was so nervous, I think. But it didn't worry me. But Auntie, in the end, we slept on a thick rubber sheet. She wouldn't put sheets in the bed anymore. So that's what happens. Then I used to have to soak the things, and when I came home from work or anything, I'd see to it. She was only happy when we were working for her.
Yeah.
You had to be working all the time. We couldn't go out to play.
No, that's right, yeah.
My weekly chores at 119 Ursher Street every week was Mondays was wash day, and sometimes I got into trouble because those days it was big tubs, and you had to put blue on. So you used to put the sheets in the blue and make them whiter. And I remember once I put too much blue. I never lived it down. Did I get into trouble for that one? But then there you are. Whether it was raining or snowing, that was wash day. And then Tuesdays, being well, it'd be nice, it'd be ironing, and they were heavy irons, and they would put on the fire. Auntie had a black bogany, they call it, where you boil a kettle. It's very old-fashioned. And I know after I was there 10 years, it was removed and a gas stove and all that was put there. But at the time it was that. And I used to have to clean that. Oh, with a black brush. Oh, horrible chore. And Tuesdays was that. Wednesdays was all the water from the washing was poured down the backyard. Scrub was scrubbing down the backyard. And then Thursdays it was bedroom day, cleaning bedrooms, and there's no vacuum cleaners then, it was just mops. And it's mops, and the houses there at the back window would go over to next door, like they would look into their yard. And I used to, even to this day, if I had a duster in my hand and shook it, I'd drop it. And it used to drop right down in. But I used to creep out late. I'm sure she knew, Mrs. Waters. She knew, because they never spoke to Auntie very much. But it's always something wrong. I don't know what it was. And I used to knock on the door and say, Miss Waters, I'm sorry, I've dropped my duster. I said, oh yeah, all right, my dear. And they'd give me a cake or a biscuit. So I'd go running in. Me and Ed would break it in half and have half each. Oh, when you think about it, oh, so funny. And then Fridays, well, I really don't know Fridays. There was always something that had to be done. It's probably the silver, the brass, or Auntie would volunteer me to go with Reverend Muller's wife, Helen, and clean the brass and silver in the church. And if she had dinner at the vicarage, she'd ask Auntie if I could go and help them, which I did. I used to help cooking and help washing up and everything, and I'm sure they paid Auntie, because I never had nothing. I used to have a meal out of it, and that was all. I had nothing else. And weekdays was every day was cleaning the passage through, and a piece of brass at the front, and washing the step, cleaning the fringe along out in the road, and cleaning the windows every day. And what was so upsetting, heartbroken over that, I was, when I left Mrs. Giddy at Lee Bay, I had a lovely cradle and doll, beautiful cradle it was, with a frill all around it. I brought that with me. And Auntie, it was mine, and I wanted to give it to Hazel. But I'd grown out of that a bit. I could give it to Hazel. She only sold it to the lady up the road, Mrs. Eastman, for one of her children, for a present. Yeah, and it was sad that, and I remember it was really hurtful, that was. Not just for me, it was for my sister, because I wanted to give it to her. No. So, you know, that...
It's unbelievable the stuff
that
she did, isn't it?
It is what one had to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, all the kiddies, at times they used to knock at the door, they got fed up in the end for me to go out with them, to play. I wasn't allowed to go out to play. Auntie used to have our clothing coupons, and she used to let the member of the family have it, because this certain lady loved her clothes. We didn't have them to buy anything, and this lady used to give Auntie what she didn't want to wear, so it was given to us, whether we liked it or no. It was handed down things. We used to have her cast-offs, which we didn't like very much. But there was a nice top there was once, beautiful maroon colour, because she was a very good knitter, this lady, and it was all lacy, and I did like that. So it was given to Auntie, but she gave it to me for a birthday present. That's what I was given. It had already been given. I must have done something wrong one day, I don't know. So she took it away again, and I had it again at Christmas. It's strange, really, very strange. What could we do? We just have to accept it and wear it. That was that. But it wasn't very nice. I think in my life, I brought my love, tried to buy it, because whenever I got home from work, I used to get out on Marine Parade, not the next stop. So I used to run in the chemist or a little gift shop, and I used to buy Auntie a bar of soap, or I'd buy something that looked quite pretty to give to her, just as a little gift. Things like that. But yeah, it was quite sad, really.
And when you gave her a present,
yeah,
how did she react?
Oh, that's all right. Just look at it. Just look at it. You know, I can't understand why
Did she
Auntie was like it.
Did she say thank you?
I think she wanted to be nice, but she couldn't. I don't know what it was. And one thing I used to dread is to go over the churchyard, and Auntie wouldn't buy no flowers. She had her mum and dad's grave and uncle's husband, you know, Jack's parents, and she used to send me to where people threw their flowers to pick out the best of flowers. When I think of it, I used to hide behind a tree while a ferry come along. I thought, why is Auntie doing that? She could buy some flowers, surely. But no. And nasty thing really was, I know she used to lend money. She was a money lender. And I used to, every Saturday morning, go around these houses, knock on the door. I used to feel sorry for the people myself, but I hated it. I hated it.
And what kind of reception did you get?
Well, I don't think they weren't my fault, you know, they didn't blame me, they just used to smile at me sometimes. I won't mention her name, she used to give me a couple of sweets, I mean. But it wasn't my fault that I had to get the money. I used to hate doing it. I used to know it was wrong, you know what I mean? Though I was glad to get out and skip around because I was free.
Yeah,
Freedom.
Yeah.
And yeah, Hazel got friendly with a young boy, I sort of say own age, called Walter. A brother, no, Danny and Walter Fowler, they were called. And Mr. Fowler used to buy his boys lovely comics. Well, Auntie was never allowed paper in the house, with no paper, no comics, nothing at all. So it used to sneak the papers, the comics to Hazel, and she used to put them under her clothes. So when it was time for us to do the bedrooms, Hazel, I said, I'll do it, Hazel. I used to do the bedroom while she'd be lying on the other bed reading comics. And she used to bang every so often because she didn't hear any movement. So we had to pretend. So Hazel used to read the papers while I did the work as usual. And then dear little Alice was so small she couldn't peel potatoes because it was her job to peel the potatoes for the day. So before I went to work or anything, I used to quickly peel the potatoes for her. And today, where I work and help my daughter, they all can never understand how fast I can peel potatoes. It's because I had to be quick, because I had to either catch the bus to work or I was late for school, all along that line. So all Hazel had to do was wrap the peelings up and get rid of them. But I did that, so I didn't want her to hurt herself. But Auntie was good in one way. Got on better with Auntie than Uncle. Auntie was, because I wanted to be loved, really, that was all. So when I used to leave work, had my wages, I used to get out at Marine Parade instead of near her home. So I'd run in the little shop, gift shop, to buy her something, just so she'd be nice for a few days, then she'd be funny again. But that was her life, very, very strict. And no love, like, you know, what you were looking for, to be honest. That's all. And poor old Hazel, Auntie had gloves. She had a big glove machine from Sudbury's factory. And she'd be on that machine from morning to night doing gloves. And poor Hazel used to have to do the turn of thumbs out. I used to do it sometimes, but sometimes she wouldn't let Hazel go to bed until she'd finished this whole box of thumbs and in these gloves. So then that's why I used to end up helping, because I didn't want Hazel to get too tired. But yes, a lot of funny things went on, but it wasn't very nice, to be honest. Yes, after a while, after Hazel had been there for a few years and I had, then Auntie took another young girl in called Marion from Ilfracombe. Well, she was a very attractive girl, very pretty. She was Carnival Queen at Appledore. Right. She was evacuated to Ilfracombe. And then Auntie took her in with us, called Marion. She was older than me. And we all got on quite well together. So I didn't mind leaving Hazel so much because Marion was there. And we still keep in touch, things like that. She lives near London, Stevenage, near London. She got lots of stories to say. She could say quite a lot as well. And when we have met, we've had a little laugh about it, talked about it. And yes, I remember I was cleaning the grate in the front room. It was before I went to work, this was. And I wasn't doing it quick enough. I don't know what happened. All I said, Auntie, I can't do something. It's so she walloped me one and knocked my tooth, my front tooth, and cracked it. So Uncle he took me into the dentist, and they said there's nothing much they could do. They didn't those days, did they? I mean, today it would have been capped and have been fine. But they said no, in time it would go grey, it would have to come out. So it took a few years, and I suppose when you have children, your calcium's not there. And it did in the end. I had to have a false one put there, which reluctantly did. But it didn't matter. And
Did she hit you at other times as well?
Pardon?
Did Auntie hit you at other times?
Yeah.
I mean, she knocked your tooth out.
Yeah.
Did she ever do anything else like that? Did she ever hit you?
Oh, she could be nasty every so often. She did tie my sister to the chair once. Because Hazel was more defiant than me. I wouldn't say much. I'd rather, you know, quiet and get over it. Or Hazel was a little bit more fiery than me. But never mind. That happened.
What was her name?
Hill, Cordelia.
Ah, right. Cordelia.
Yeah.
Right. And what did you call her?
Auntie.
Just Auntie.
Just Auntie. Social came to me when I left school, which I was only 14. I didn't know it at the time. I said, "Now, what would you like to do, Doreen? What sort of work would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I always want to work in a chemist shop." Because it was chemist shop on the quay, Appledore Quay, and I was always looking in the window. I loved looking in the window at things. And, "Oh, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that." Well, I said, "A shoe shop then. I work in a shoe shop. I'd like that." "Oh, no, you can't do that. No, there's no vacancies in a shoe shop." So I said, "A tea shop." A tea shop. It's funny, isn't it, what you say? Tea shop. Now, sorry, Doreen. There's two choices. Buckley Laundry or Sudbury's Glove Factory. And I thought, oh no, I'm not going to glove factory. Oh, because Auntie had a glove factory. And all you could hear was that machine going morning and night, morning and night. My poor sister used to have to sit and turn out her gloves, turn out thumbs ready for the next morning for them to collect, for them to take up the factory. No, I couldn't do it. So I said, no, I'll go to Buckley Laundry. And it was the happiest days of my life. I loved it there, I really did. And there was a few people up there that spoilt me, I think, because I never took no packing. I couldn't. The only time I took packing, when I brought it myself on a Thursday night down Bowden's fish and chip shop. Took it to work and warmed it up like all the other ladies did. But other than that, but this lady Connie, she's a brilliant lady. She used to sit beside her, and she said the first time, "Have you brought no lunch, me aunts?" Because that's how they speak, me aunts. I said, "No." "Well, you've got to. You've got to bring some food with you. You come to work all day." So I said, "Well," I said to Auntie, "got to take packing." "Well, there's nothing there. It's in the cupboard. It's there if you want to take it." There wasn't a lot there, so I never bothered. I was too busy anyway. I was far too busy working before I went to catch the bus, so I didn't have time to. But Connie in the end used to bring a little bit of packing, so that was it. It was just satisfying me, that did. So, but before I went to work, I had to do. My sister had the job of doing the potatoes, bless her. Well, she had such tiny hands, and I said, "I'll do it. I'll do your potatoes." And today, I think I could really peel a sack of potatoes in 10 minutes, I bet I would, because I used to do it so quick to help her. And I said, "Well, you get rid of the peelings. I've done your potatoes," things like that. Used to help her with. And then other funny things, really. But Auntie wouldn't let us go to bed until the thumbs were turned out. That could be midnight sometimes. I worked in a very nice block of ladies, which I have seen some today that we always speak and have a laugh. But they had a club book, because I'd never had much to wear, really. I wanted to look nice, but Auntie wouldn't lend us no money to buy anything. We had to pay our lodge. By the time you pay half your lodge, I didn't have much left. By the time you paid your bus fare, there wasn't a lot left. And if I worked overtime, which she used to take half of it, I never kept a lot. And weekends, and I went up to Hills Farm, picking potatoes, Swedes. I loved it. Went out with some of the ladies in Ursher Street on a Saturday morning, but I had to give up some of my money as well of that. But I used to save that to buy clothes. But there was a lady at the laundry had a club book called K's, and she said, "Go on, my aunt, let's have a look at the book. There's nice things in there." So I said, "Oh, you know." She said, "No, you won't have to pay very much. You just pay so much a week. That'll be all right." So I thought, right. So I picked a lovely blue pleated skirt, pale blue blouse, lovely cardigan, a pair of shoes, a pack of pants, and a night dress, and it came to £0.50 a week. So I was thrilled to bits when it come. I couldn't wait to put it all on. And Auntie said, where have you got that from?" I said, "Work, Auntie." "Huh, well, you haven't paid for that." She said. I said, "No, I pay so much a week." Oh, so she wasn't too bad about that. So but at work they had a trip to Plymouth, Navy Day. So I was all excited and went. It was a lovely day, and went over the ships and all this, and I fell absolutely in love with it. Well, I think I fell in love with the uniform. That's what it was. And it gave you forms to fill in if you were interested in, so I willingly filled it in. Never thought any more about it. And I get home from work one evening, and Auntie said, "I want you, my lady. Sit there." I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "You know what's the matter." I said, "I don't." She said, "I've had a letter." She opened my mail and said, "Dear Ussie, how dare you? You want to go in the Navy?" I said, well, I only wanted to have a look." Have a look. Oh, she said, "We ripped it up in front of me and put it in the bin. That's it, no more. You're not going on any trips anymore. That's it." No more trips. But there you go. And like I say, then I was about 17 and more, and I met John at this wedding. A friend at wedding, a girl at work was getting married, and asked me to go to pictures. So I went to pictures quite a lot. And at the pictures there was fruit you could buy, sweets, chocolate, whatever, and I'd never seen anything like it. And John used to say, "Pick what you want what you want." And I used to pick heaps of it. And he used to say after, I thought he was a pig, where you put bars of chocolate, fruit, sweets, put it all in my handbag, and I'd never give him any. Oh, it was funny really, that. And I got home, and my sister caught the 9:30 bus home, and my sister would be in bed waiting for me to come home, so I'd share the sweets and chocolate and fruit and have a proper picnic. We would, till actually one night I had an orange, and Hazel peeled it, and Auntie and Uncle was in the other room, and Auntie said, "Jack, do you smell something?" And Uncle said, "Yeah," because the rooms were only not very far apart. "Yeah, I smell an orange. Have you got anything in there, Doreen? What have you got in there?" "Oh, I said, well, nothing much, Auntie, nothing a lot." So of course he'd come in, and there was orange and sweets all in the bed. That was it. Oh dear, I never lived that down. I said I couldn't bring any more home in the end, just a little bit, and I used to tuck it in my pocket. I'd do not so much. I wouldn't take so much, I wouldn't be so greedy. Oh dear. No, before that I had an accident at work. I hurt my hand, so I was home quite a long while, but I used to do everything with one hand, and in the end I was excellent with writing with my left hand. I was good at that then. But I had a skin graft. I had to have a skin graft because it was quite a bad accident. Hazel was a very good dressmaker. I would like drawing, design. I did like drawing and art and things, and she was very good at making anything up. She used to take it to actually Sudbury's where she worked, and in her dinner hour she'd make something up for herself to go out with. And this particular, she took a lining of a coat that was in a cupboard in a little sitting room, a lot of clothes in there, pushed in there. So every so often we had to tidy it up. But it'd been in there a long time, so Hazel went and took the lining out of it. It was a shocking purple, beautiful colour. So she took all the lining out of this coat, took it to work and made herself a shift dress. Well, if it wasn't, well, a fortnight after, Auntie said, well, let's turn that cupboard out, we'll see what's in there. Of course, turned the coat out, with no lining in it. And well, it was very cross. Hazel got into trouble for that. But, well, she knew Hazel had done it. It's no one else. Because we kept saying, well, I don't know what's happened to that. Because Hazel looked up and said, oh, the mice have got that, Auntie. The mice have had that. So it was some funny stories, really. But it was only wish it had been a bit kinder, a bit nicer. But I'm afraid not. So there you go. But then I got married and I had David, and I used to call him Grandma, Grandad. Used to try to, but my sister was a little more, well, my sister came to live with me because she couldn't stand, Auntie took another lodger in, a young boy, but he was a bit cocky like, and Hazel didn't like it. So she came and lived with me. Auntie knew about it, so it wasn't done underhanded. And anyway, got married and got Auntie involved in things. So I wanted to. I had no one else. It was nice to think there was someone and that. So Uncle died actually. So me and John saw about help to do all through that. And then Auntie wasn't took very well. So I had her living with me. She lived with me for 3-4 months. I never had nothing at all. Didn't take no money from her, anything. And she used to carry her purse around with her everywhere. She had 9 home helps in the end. And in the end, it was me that had to go down and if I should go over an evening and take David or one of the children with me to do her work. But she'd follow you everywhere you went. But I was used to that, so it didn't worry me. So in the end, she had to come and live with me. And then she had a stroke, so she was in the Torridge Hospital. But I used to go down and do her hair, go visit her as much as I could. So I only lived up the road, so I was lucky. So every other day I used to go in, used to do her hair for her. Anyway, I got married and everything was well. I had a good nice wedding, but I couldn't afford a wedding dress. I did buy my headdress and everything else, but one of Auntie's relations had a wedding dress, and she loaned me a wedding dress, which I didn't want it really, but I couldn't do much about it. It looked quite nice, but I didn't want it really. So I know Marion was a bridesmaid, Hazel and a little friend, girl called Pinnock, June Pinnock. And I went to live in Bideford. Why we got married in February, it was because those days you got an income tax return, which was quite a good bit of money actually. John was in quite a good job. He went away to work. So it was quite a good bit of money you had back from the taxman. We had a flat. Lucky, no problem getting a flat. It was a council flat. Then my sister came to live with me. While we were there one day, I knocked on the door, and it was a social lady I actually knew. So I did know them all. I Miss Clouds, Miss Bates, Mrs. Dashwood. I knew all the social people. And she said, we've got some nice news for you, Doreen. I said, what was that? She said, you've got a brother. I said, a brother? Yes, she said, you've got a brother called John, and he's being fostered by so-and-so in Brighton, because that's where he was born, in Brighton. But your mother's not there, disappeared again. Oh, dear. So she said, would you like to have him down or give him a holiday? He's so excited to know that he's got some sisters. So I did. He stayed down with us for a month, and then we kept in touch ever since. I've been there on holiday. He's in America. I've done very well for himself. And he came back to England, but he preferred going back to America. But what's lovely about it, he still speaks Londoner, like Brighton. And the American people are fascinated with him. He's never took the lingo of America at all. He's still got his same lingo. Lovely looking lad. Yes, and his dad was a Canadian. But I'll tell you first about my dad. He must have died, so my dad, she didn't do it behind my dad's back. My dad had died, but I didn't know this until I'll tell you the story now.
Hazel decided to get married. As a result, a rather surprising trail of events led to Doreen finding out a lot more information about her family.
My sister wanted to get married. Everything was done. I'd done a reception, done her cake, everything. And its relations was coming up from Plymouth. And I lived in a bigger house then, so, I was able to do it in the house. And I had David then, and I had Denise, so I had 2 children by then. And she went to the registrar office, and they said, no, she can't be married. She had to get her parents' consent. In those days, you couldn't get married unless you did have your parents' consent, unless you went to Gretna Green or somewhere like that. But so we went to court about it, magistrate. Told him the story, and he was so annoyed about it to think all these years we've gone through what we had, and they still hadn't found anything about any of the family for us, nothing. They went all through our lives, with no paperwork, with nothing. So he said to them, I will give the consent for you to get married. And he said, I want you to come back again in a month's time, and I want the social to find out where your dad is and your mum is, and I want it back here. So I waited a month and went back again. And he said, well, I have good and bad news. He said, we can't find your mother at the moment. She's certainly not dead or anything, as if that would have shown up. But I'm afraid to tell you your dad has died. He died in said the day, I forget, but he was 32 years old. So that is, I can remember now, why he never come back to Ilfracombe to see me. And Mrs. Giddy used to say, it's funny that he's not come back to see you. Because he used to send me sweet ration, clothes. He sent me a beautiful, I can see it today, a pretty blue dress with a bolero, with lace inside, with a big blue button there. And it was too big for me. But I cried that much that Mrs. Giddy had to let me put it on. So there you go. That was a mystery. All those years I went through not knowing, and I knew in my head I could see him. I could, and not to be told the truth. That's what I'm getting at with my story. Nothing was ever. It's a wonder I wasn't put in asylum really, because I did have nightmares. I used to get nightmares pretty bad. Because I think I got a little bit muddled up about why and when and what. But I was strong. I thought, no, I'm not going to let this get me down. I still went to see Auntie because I had my first child, David. Used to go down and used to call her grandma and all that, to try to make her welcome. They used to come in every so often for tea and dinner. But Hazel was a little bit, not say harder than me, but she didn't really, the way they used to treat us, I don't know. I would like to mention about my dad. All those years of never seeing him, after seeing him like I did very often. He was 6'2", and very dashing looking man. But I have got photos of him, and I'll show them. And because when he was a child, he had rheumatic fever, and that must have given him asthma pretty bad, and a weak heart, because it would rheumatic fever affects your heart a bit. And where he was living in Croydon, it was very, very smoggy, terrible smog, so it didn't help at all. So that's why it suddenly stopped the connection between us all, because he suddenly died of a heart attack, 32 years old. And that's the only time I knew, when my sister went to get permission to marry. The social people just kept saying they didn't know nothing. And they, in the end, the magistrate made them look into it. They still never found my mum. We still did it on our own. Yeah. Used to work at a health centre, which I loved very much. I still fostered children in between. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And I had a private job, health centre, and fostered children. Then I took in dockyard boys, doing their apprentices at Bideford, Medden Street. And that was a nice job. And still keep in touch with some of them, still send me Christmas cards, which is nice. I got Richard and Sally from fostering, brother and sister. They're still in touch. And, you know, they're all in with the family. They always have been. They were 3 months old, Richard. Sally was 6 months old when I had her. So, and they've been there ever since. So, you know, and so life goes on, things went on, and I had several jobs, and we lived in Clovelly Road, Bideford, very house that really needed doing up badly. And John being a builder, it was not much trouble, so it was all done. It was all done beautiful. And all of a sudden we got this chance of buying a place at Westwood Hoe to turn it into a home, because I already had 2 people at Clovelly Road. The boys, dockyards were gone then, because it had finished, the apprentices had finished. But I had 2 elderly gentlemen that wanted to come to my place, which you could do then. You could, and lodged in my place, and we looked after them. And my daughter Stephanie went to Exeter training as a nurse, and she'd done her 3 years training and come back to Barnstaple. And I had another daughter, Denise. She was very good. She used to help around the house, and Sally at home as well. And David, my son, he was an apprenticeship down the dockyard as a welder. So, you know, and then unfortunately things happen in life. We sold Clovelly Road and went to Donington. And in the end it worked out the business, and we had 20 people. But we were lucky there, very lucky. We had good staff, and they all we wanted to come and work at Donington. We had no trouble with staff. You could get, but you know, trouble, yeah, you can't get anybody. But there, I must say, we had good staff, nice memories. After all this searching, which I pleaded and asked, in the Bideford Health Centre was all my details from when I was a child at Croydon. And they said they never had it. And it wasn't for somebody called, one of the nice social workers, he left. There's 3 of them that were very nice, and they all left. But this particular one came to the door, came to me and said, I've got some papers, Doreen. I think you'll be sad and you might be very unhappy, but I'd like you to take them. We've been found before they go to Exeter. Yeah, the vault, and there's everything there. About my mum, about my dad, where I lived, everything. yet associated they couldn't find nothing. And it was there all the time.
It was just down the road. It was just down the road. They couldn't.
Down the road. I was working at the health centre. I could have gone and found it myself. It just shows they weren't doing their work, you see. But this one, John, was lovely because I used to foster children, and I used to tell him about this. But he didn't know. So I think he knew Bob, and they were clearing out a lot of things, sending a lot to Exeter. And he found it. And I've been waiting years for it. It's one thing I must say, Auntie got older and Uncle died at Appledore and she sent for us. And I felt sorry for Auntie, so I used to go down and do a bit of work for her, take her washing home. And I thought I'd get her some home milk, seeing I was in Bideford, she was there. But she had 9 home milks because she's very disbelieved people. She always thought somebody was going to steal from her. She used to follow them around the house and everything. So that was out the window. So in the end, she did get poorly. So she came to live with me in Clovelly Road. But Hazel, a lot of people couldn't understand why I did it. But I thought, well, what's the point of bearing grudges like that? There's no point when she didn't have anyone else. And her relations didn't want her. They only wanted one thing, and we know what that was. Because I had the key to Auntie's house, and the only thing I took with me, with Bideford, was a washing machine, because she had a nice washer hoover one, and mine had broke down, and she wasn't using it, so that's the only thing that I took from that house. And there were some relations of Auntie's that were, some were quite nice. One of them said to me, you know, if you got anything in that house, 'cause I mean, Auntie was like a daughter to her, really. I mean, from the age of 8-year-old. See what I mean? And you take what you want, Doreen. Don't you let anything. Auntie used to have all the photos of the children from school, wedding photos, you name it. When we were younger, all sorts of things. Well, and that was that. It's a good, and so Auntie stayed with me. Then she really did get poorly, so she had to go to hospital, you know, stay in Torridge Hospital. She'd had a few strokes and that. So I was with her the morning. They sent for me to say she wasn't really well. So I sat with her until she died. And do you know what? They come out of the woodworm. The people that I thought were nice people, and I will not mention their names, but I will if I had to, come demanding the key to the house, and that was it. They didn't want to know me after that. And see, in Auntie's drawers, I mean, I never thought like that. I never have thought like that. In the drawers was things belonging to me, belonging to Hazel probably, Marion, photos and all things like that. It's got a lot. Never had anything. So there you go. And they were supposed to be religious. Supposed to be chapel people. I did find our mother. My sister's daughter Tracy and Stephanie, we rang and rang around everywhere looking for the name of Thomas or Cartridge, because my mum's maiden name was Cartridge. Very posh names. And then she married. She did marry again, but he was called Thomas. But she didn't, I think she had another daughter, and she called that daughter Hazel. Strange.
Doreen was 4 years old in 1939 when her mother put her on a train for North Devon as an evacuee. I asked Doreen how old she was the next time she saw her mother.
Oh, I was married then. I had children. David and all them were grown up. That's how long.
Oh, right. So,
And I don't think she really wanted to know. She just didn't make nothing of it at all. A very pretty lady, to be honest, but short and white. But she was a little bit, oh, I don't know.
do you think she felt guilty or something?
Pardon?
Did she feel guilty, do you think?
She must have. There must have been something in her that, she never brought it up. But it's funny that she'd have another child. She called it Hazel.
Same name.
Queer, innit?
Yeah.
But, yeah. So she come and stay, and I had her stay with me for a week. But my sister, she had her with her for a little while. She rang me up. I said, "Mum, you've got to take her. I can't stand her anymore. I don't want to." I said, she wouldn't. No, she wouldn't forgive her for putting her in home and that. But I tried to say to Hazel, times were very bad then, Hazel. They weren't like today.
On the left, sporting a flowery blouse, is Doreen's sister Hazel. By her side is Doreen's mother, Gladys Cartridge. Brother John is at the back. Sister Margaret is in black. Clad in green, same mother, different dad, is Doreen's half-sister, also called Hazel. Doreen's stepsister Hazel, not to be confused with her sister Hazel. Her stepsister Hazel bred St Bernard dogs and showed at Crufts.
We only ever saw her once when we met our mother. We saw her, and then I had her down with me as well for a week or two. And she went back, Doncaster, somewhere up that way she lived.
Did she ever speak about sending you away?
No, nothing. We tried, but she used to change. Oh, the war was on, and she did say, and I'd like to know if it's true, that she went to Dunkirk. She joined the ATS. She went to Dunkirk, which was not a nice place, was it? No. She used to say that she nursed young boys and whatnot, and it was very sad. Nursed them and looked after them. And she had to wear a rubber suit and go, so it must have been atomic or something. She had to put on a rubber suit and that something. I never get one. And that in Parliament, it got her plaque up on the wall there or something. I'd like to really know if that's true. For doing why she said that, if it wasn't true, you know what I mean? Yeah. I would like to mention about my dad. All those years of never seeing him, after seeing him like I did, very often. He was 6'2", and very dashing looking man. But I have got photos of him, and I'll show them. And because when he was a child, he had rheumatic fever, and that must have given him asthma pretty bad, and a weak heart, because it would rheumatic fever affects your heart a bit. And where he was living in Croydon, it was very, very smoggy, terrible smog, so it didn't help at all. So that's why it suddenly stopped the connection between us all, because he suddenly died of a heart attack, 32 years old. And that's the only time I knew, when my sister went to get permission to marry. The social people just kept saying they didn't know nothing. And they, in the end, the magistrate made them look into it. They still never found my mum. We still did it on our own. And I actually have got lovely children, grandchildren. But I must bring up what I say. I miss and think every day. People don't think that I do, perhaps. But I lost a little boy at 3 months old, Andrew Paul. And so I think when that happened to me, I might have changed a bit. So, I might have changed a little bit. My husband always said that I did. But suppose I never really got over it. So then I started fostering, just to fill the gap. I know what it was, to fill that empty space. I'd like to tell everybody too that I went to school with that I was younger than all you lot. And I found out I was 12 months younger than I was all through my school days. So there. I don't think people realise what some children went through. It was horrible. When I look back at it now, I look at my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, especially when they're 3-year-old and 4, I think, oh, was that me? You know. And I know Mr. Giddy at the time when I got there, he could not believe I was the age I was, because I couldn't even look over the table. So you know how small I was. But I can't say that now, I'm afraid. But it just made me stronger, I think. That I could get over whatever come along, I could master it. Oh, I hope that's all right then, eh?
Yeah.